I don't mean to bamboozle people with nonsense. I'd rather just expose all the nonsense of establishment astronomy. But what we have here are called isochrones, okay? An isochrone is the evolutionary path for a star. So you can have an isochrone. So you have your star, and it goes down an evolutionary path for its endpoint. So it starts here, ends here. Starts here, ends here. Starts here, ends here. Starts here, ends here. And this basically is an establishment version of what an isochrone is. Okay? It starts at a given mass, and then it goes down an isochrone, its evolutionary path, and basically stays that same mass through its evolution. So the isochrone for a mass object of 0.9 masses of the sun, that's what that little symbol means, would go along this path. Boom. And then it would stop right here. Okay? A 10 mass object would evolve and not lose any mass and become, boom, a 10 mass object of the sun, that is 10 mass sun masses would end right here. So in other words, what you can deduce from this is that different masses of stars stay the same mass per their isochrone. So you have a 10 mass becoming a 10 mass, a 5 becoming a 5, a 1 becoming a 1, a 0.9 becoming a 0.9. They don't lose any mass, okay? No mass loss. That means that the star doesn't actually evolve in a establishment stellar isochrone. The evolutionary path for a star in establishment astronomy has multiple isochrones based off of its mass. Because if you go on the Wikipedia page and you see, they say, well, a star's evolutionary path is determined upon its mass. But if it loses mass, if it has mass loss, okay, we can come back to reality. Because what we can do is we can have a gaseous cloud burr the star via a large Z-pinch, becoming a bipolar nebula, okay? And then as the nebula dissipates, it becomes a white dwarf. And this white dwarf expands, moves to the highest area that it can go. So if it's 10 masses, it'll go up here. Maybe the white dwarf didn't have the material to start off of, so it goes right here, maybe to like 7 masses. Or if it goes right here, it can go to 5 masses. Or there. It can go anywhere it wants, depending on the cloud. But what this includes, is not included by the establishment's version, because their models don't have stars losing mass, is that in stellar metamorphosis, the star loses mass as it evolves. Evolves. Okay? Stars evolve in stellar metamorphosis. They don't stay put and then end right here and then not go anywhere. That's ridiculous. What actually happens is a star born expands to its fullest extent, really hot, really bright, and then it starts cooling like a giant campfire, depending on how or where it ends up on this little graph right here. And another huge problem, and I've gone over this multiple times, is the establishment's version only has stars as being plasma. Okay? So all stars in their model are going to shine. But unfortunately, for them, the star continues to lose mass as it evolves and dies, reaching a point where it has no spectrum. Okay? It reaches a point where it doesn't have any spectrum anymore. And ironically, I don't want to say ironically, when it loses its spectrum, it becomes something other than star, according to establishment. It becomes a planet, which is really strange if you think about it. It's like saying when a baby human grows up, it becomes an adult, but it's not a human anymore, it's something else. That's a weird reason. But what isn't weird is taking that star, gravitationally contracting it, and having it lose mass to stellar wind, radiation, okay, CMEs, and coronal mass ejections and solar flares. Okay? You have all these ways that it can lose mass over its evolutionary timeline, and that happens over many, many, many billions of years. And when it hits a point to where it can't lose mass as fast as these methods, well, that's easy to explain. This is the area where hot Jupiter mass loss can come in. And the hot Jupiters, as everybody knows, orbit really close to their host star. So you have a star, and you have an orbit of a hot Jupiter really close to it, which rips away its outer atmosphere, leaving a smaller object to orbit the galaxy and take up or orbit around another host star, eventually exposing its rocky interior, which has been fully differentiated already via the previous evolutionary timeline that was provided earlier. And then, of course, that material is then recycled back into solar nebula, and the process can continue depending on how much energy the galaxy had when it was born. But there we have it. I just want to leave people to know that the establishment's version of a stellar isochrone depends on the mass. But if it loses mass, there's only one main isochrone. It's born, it expands greatly, and then it loses mass along its evolution and it dies. This vastly simplifies this, where you have to have all these equations and all this nonsense. You can easily visualize this. Starts out as a cloud, pinches, expands greatly like a giant bubble, and then collapses upon itself as it cools and dies. All stars do that. As well, it isn't determined, or its evolutionary path is not determined by the amount of mass it has. It actually is determined by its rate of mass loss. So there you have another main difference. This is determined by its mass content. This is determined by its rate of mass loss. How fast it loses mass will determine how fast it evolves. And this is determined by how much mass it has, not losing any mass at all, meaning the stars in this model don't have coronal mass ejections, they don't have solar wind, and they don't have solar flaring. No CMEs, no solar flaring, and no solar wind. As we all know, if you have a model that doesn't have any mass loss from the star, what you have is a model that does not represent reality. And that also means that probably mathematicians have ruined everything, because they like to take a star and put it into a box. They say, well, this is a star, and here's my little box, and this is how everything works. Oops. And if you have anything to say against it, you're just an idiot. But the truth is, it's the mathematicians who are the idiots. Okay, today is May 28th, 2015. Hopefully this helps everybody out. If you have questions or comments concerning this, please leave them below.